Hey, hey, hey. Okay, so now let's talk about Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man is Hard to Find. And I'm sorry, it was so disappointing that it wasn't about finding love. Um, I'm sort of sorry. I'm not that sorry at all. So it's a great short story. It's a gothic. We're going to talk, obviously we're going to go through this. So it was written by Flannery O'Connor. It was published in 1953. I have my notes. That's what I'm looking at. 53? Yeah, 1953. Okay, so it's set in Georgia in the 1950s, and it's about this really dysfunctional family that they're going on a road trip. The grandma kind of has a power trip, and she's like, we should be going here. And everybody else is like, how about just shut up? So there is very little respect for the grandmother in this story, and it's very evident mostly by by June Star. Anyway, sorry. So it's unfortunate, but it's the 50s, which is kind of odd for the way that the grandchildren and Bailey treat the grandmother, because back then it was so much more of respect your elders. And now, not that it's not prominent now, but I feel like things are a little looser than they used to be. So anyway, so the family sets off for Florida, even though the grandma wants to go to Tennessee because she hears that the misfit who has escaped from jail and is a serial killer or murderer is heading to Florida as well. Okay, so she does not want to run into him. What does this mean? We're foreshadowing, folks. Okay, there would be zero reason for her to even say this if we weren't going to run into him. Okay, so on their way, they stop at Red Sammy's barbecue, and they hear about the misfit. They hear that he might be nearby. They talk about, what it means to be a good man and that there's not a lot of good men left. Also, Red Sammy decides to say like how he's a good man by letting folks just like kind of pay later. Like honesty. But his wife has very different feelings on that. So let's hop over to this real fast. Yeah, June starts she's snotty. Bear with me. I just want to make sure that I'm getting to that part of the where I want to talk about. I'm sorry. She asked Bailey if he would like to dance. He only glared at her. We also don't get, the mother doesn't get a name, and that alludes heavily to her identity. But we'll get to the characters like and analyzing them in a minute. So I did miss, I'm sorry, before they even get to Red Sammy's, the grandmother decides to tell the kids, mostly because she's trying to keep them to shut the fuck up, that, there was this plantation that she says that it's gone with the wind, and that's just an allusion, obviously, to the movie. But she tells them a story about when she was younger and she had this suitor, I don't know what else to call him, that his initials were EAT, okay, Edgar Atkins Teagarden from Jasper, Georgia. And that she would have, she should have married him. He bought Coca-Cola stock when it first came out, and he only died a few years ago. So he obviously died a wealthy man. So that kind of gives us insight into like what the grandmother thinks is kind of important, but she doesn't realize this until, retrospectively. So anyway, so I'm sorry. They're at Red Sammy's. They're talking about like what makes a good man, and that, a good man is really hard to find. Isn't that the truth? People aren't nice like they used to. You're clearly a good man. Have you seen if the misfit escaped? I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't attack this place right here. If he hears about it, I wouldn't be surprised to see him. And Red Sammy makes a comment saying like he can remember the days where you could leave your screen door or your door in general unlocked, Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've never left my doors unlocked. Like, even when I lived in like the most suburban area in northern New Jersey, my doors were still locked. So I don't really, whatever. Okay, so they leave, right? They leave Red Sammy's and they decide to go down a dirt road because the grandma says that there's a secret panel in this house and it was so cool. So the kids are like, well, let's see it. And the grandma's like, yeah, score one for me. But Bailey, the dad, or the grandma's son, is like, ugh. But they go anyway, right? Now, this is all there. This becomes very important, okay? So they go down this dirt road. They see the old plantation. However, at this point, the grandma realizes that she's in the wrong damn state. It is the wrong state. Now, where is it? It's not much further. Where is it? I know she says it. Shoot. I'm sorry. I'm trying to look for it as I'm talking about it, and it's not working out too well. The place had better turn up in a minute. Bailey says, I'm going to turn around. It's not much farther. So she realizes that, you know, she does realize that it was not in Georgia, it was in Tennessee. However, this is right after the fact that Pitty Singh jumps out of her basket that she had packed with her because she didn't want to leave the cat. For God knows what reason, she did not want to leave her cat. Listen, I got 4 cats and I got no problem leaving them for a weekend. They don't even care. They don't even know if I'm here or not, to be honest. They just are like, is my food bowl filled or no? So Pitty Singh jumps out of this basket and basically like lands on Bailey, who is driving, which causes Bailey to flip the car into a ditch. They have an accident. June Star is ecstatic. And she's like, we've had an accident. And then she's like, oh, nobody died. What? Makes no sense. Whatever. June Star, you need to just go home. So anyway, so they have this accident. She then realizes that shit, that plantation house that I was talking about was not actually here in Georgia. It was supposed to be in Tennessee. And I'm old and can't remember shit. So the mother dislocates her shoulder because she's also holding the baby, their infant baby. Okay. And then everybody else just kind of has, you know, typical scratches and bruises and cuts. Okay. They're a little shaken, but they're all right. The grandma, who desperately just wants attention to constantly be on her, says that she thinks that she's injured an organ, but she hasn't. She's just, whatever. So at this point, okay, the misfit shows up, but we don't quite know yet that he's the misfit. I mean, as readers, we kind of already have an idea that this is who it is. So it's a hearse-like vehicle. It comes to a stop just a little ways away from them, and 3 guys come over. And the children are just so ecstatic. They're like, we've had an accident. And the grandmother has this feeling that she knows this person, and she's just like, So the one person goes, you know, I see you guys had a little spill. And the grandma, we turned over twice. She's so excited. I don't know why these people are so damn excited about being in a car accident, but it is nothing.
Grandma's leaving.
Okay, well, her car is still here. You need to wait. I'm not done. So the misfit, what? 10 minutes, buddy, says, we saw it happen and you only flipped once. So like, chill your roll. Okay. Then he says to one of his goonies, try to see if it'll, you know, will it run? And John Wesley, one of the children, says, why you got a gun? What you gonna do with that? And okay, all right, Christian. Okay. She says, why do you have that gun? What are you gonna do with it? And the man says to the children's mother, Would you mind telling the children to sit down because they make me nervous. And now this guy's got a gun, so like, yeah, we're gonna sit the fuck down, okay? Now June Star, in her blaze of glory attitude, says, I'm sorry, you're not gonna tell us what to do because like you're not our mom. Meh. But the mom is just like, yeah, you're gonna come over here. And they go over. Okay. So now Bailey says to them, we're in a predicament. And the grandmother scrambles up to her feet and goes, oh my God, you're the misfit. Now, why in the world she wouldn't just keep her mouth shut is beyond me. The man smiles a little bit. He's like, yep, but it would have been better for all of you if you didn't recognize me. Obviously, we know why. Okay, so Bailey turns his head to his mom and basically, you know, kind of tells her to just like, shut up. Okay, so now the misfit says, don't get upset. Sometimes a man says things he doesn't mean because now Bailey's yelling at her. And he says, I don't reckon your son meant to talk to you that way, but I 100% am going to guarantee you he did, because wouldn't you mean to say like, you need to shut up at this moment? Okay, so the grandmother now is very concerned for her life and says, you wouldn't shoot a lady, would you? And he says, I would hate to have to. All right. And she says, I know you're a good man. You don't look a bit like that common, you know, like you've got common blood. I know you must come from nice people. Now, we all know what she's attempting to do, but it's obviously not going to work. Okay. So he says, yeah, I came from the finest people in the world. But you know, they say that I shot my dad, so I guess I did. Okay, so then they talk about the weather a little bit. Everybody, you know, Bailey is very upset because he doesn't know how to protect his family. Please stop. Well, I didn't mean it. Bailey wants to protect his family. However, the grandmother could care less about everybody else, and she only cares about herself. But we'll get back to that later. Okay, and the misfit says to her, like, I appreciate that you think that I came from a good family, but it doesn't really matter. So Hiram interrupts them and says it'll take about a half an hour to fix the car. And so the misfit says, well, first you and Bobby Lee, the other crony, get that little boy, the guy and that little boy, okay, so Bailey and John Wesley, to step over there for a little bit, just like to have a chat, okay? The boys want to ask you something, he says to Bailey. Would you mind stepping back in them woods there with them? So Bailey now is kind of panicked, and he's like, nobody realizes what this is. We're in a terrible predicament. Like, please, you know, don't do this, whatever. And grandmother reached up to adjust the brim of her hat as if she were going to the woods with him. It comes off her hand. She stood staring at it as it fell to the ground. This is symbolism, as my husband likes to say it. Okay, so John Wesley and the father, Bailey, walk off to the woods with Bobby Lee and Hiram. Okay. And says, Bailey turns to his mom, the grandmother, and says, I'll be back in a minute, Mama. Just wait on me. And, you know, the grandmother is like, you come back here right now. But obviously that's not what's going to happen. I'm going to kill him. Okay. So we all hear him shoot it. I can't. Please hold. Sorry about that. Okay. So Bailey and John Wesley are shot in the woods. And the misfit continues his conversation with the grandmother and says, I'm not a good man. Okay. Because she's trying to convince him that he's a good man. And he's like, no, lady, like, I'm not. Okay. I'm really not. So, you know, they have a little more interaction between the two of them. He takes Bailey's shirt. You could be honest if you tried. So the grandmother takes her time and tries to really convince the misfit that he's a good person. Now, why she does this, we're really not sure. There's a lot of different reasons it could be, because she's really trying to save herself. But again, we're going to get back to analyzing the characters in a minute. Okay, so yeah, gonna hit him. Okay. So anyway, now that I've breathed, she asks him, the grandmother asks the misfit, you know, what got you sent to jail anyway? And he says, I forgot what I did. I don't, you know, it was a head doctor at the jail that said that all I did was kill my dad, but I know that's a lie. My dad died in 1918 of the flu, and I had nothing to do with it. So she tells him, well, if you just pray, Jesus will help you. And, you know, so then why don't you pray? And he says, I don't want no help. I'm doing all right myself. And by help, it's help. Okay. So now Bobby Lee and Hiram come out of the woods after this, you know, this confrontation, because it took quite some time to actually shoot Bailey and John Wesley. So the misfit says, I found out the crime doesn't matter. You can do one thing or you can do another, kill a man or take a tire off his car, because sooner or later you're going to forget what it was you did and you're just going to be punished for it. Which, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're still getting punished. So the children's mom then began to cry because, you know, her husband and her son are dead. So he says, lady, would you like to go join your husband? And the mother says, yes, thank you, very politely. It's really one of the only times that she speaks. Okay, the other time is when she asks Bailey to dance with her at Red Sammy's. But she says yes. And so then Hiram has to help her up because, you know, her shoulder's dislocated. She's holding a baby. And we also have June Star. So now we have this act of kindness of helping her up. But we're really just going to go shoot her. So June Star still remains, you know, the kind of angsty bitch she is. And I don't want to hold hands with him. He reminds me of a pig. So honestly, she should have just been shot right there. But that's just my fault. Okay, so now the grandmother and the misfit are alone because Bobby Lee and Hiram are off in the woods now with June Star, the baby, and the mom. And she continues to pray. Jesus, you know, he says, Jesus shown everything off balance. It was the same case with him as with me, except he hadn't committed any crime. And they could prove I had because they had the papers on me, of course. They never showed me my papers. That's why I signed myself now. I said long ago, you get a signature and sign everything you do and keep a copy of it. That doesn't really make sense to what he's talking about, but that's okay. Okay. Let's see. So now the lady is essentially hysterical. She's like, you've got good blood. I know you wouldn't shoot a lady, but now keep in mind that her hat fell off. Okay. That's important. I know you come from nice people. You would never shoot a lady. You would never shoot a lady. Okay. There never was a body that gave the Undertaker a tip, is what he says. You can analyze that on your own. She's then, you know, oh, my son. Very sad. So Hiram and Bobby Lee come back from the woods at this point, and the face that the misfit, or I'm sorry, the face that the grandmother gives the misfit is very childlike and very like, please don't. But she's kind of like, I don't know what to do. So, yeah. Because of this, you know, she does something, okay? As they're talking about Jesus, her head clears and she sees his face and she murmured, you're one of my babies. You're one of my own children. And she reached out to touch him. And that is all it took for him to shoot her. And so Bobby Lee goes, wow, she was a talker, wasn't she? And the misfit replies with, well, she would have been a good woman if it had been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life. Okay, so that's kind of how it ends. Everybody's dead except for the misfit. So you can determine if he is a good man or not because he shot her. There is a lot, you know, obviously this would be easier to go over if we were in person. I say that usually once every video. So let's look at the characters. We have Bailey. the son, we have the children's mother, we have John Wesley, the grandmother, June Starr, Pitty Singh, and then the misfit, and of course Hiram and Bobby Lee, but they don't matter. Okay, they're just cronies. So Bailey is very, when it comes to his relationship with his mother, he's kind of a pushover, but when it comes to the relationship he has with his wife, he clearly, you know, makes the rules and clearly is the disciplinarian. The kids kind of run the show, or so they think, but they've got attitude problems. The mom, she's not given a name, which speaks heavily to her identity as only a mother and not as a wife or a person, but just a mother. I'm not ready yet. You need to wait.
No, I just want to tell you something.
What?
Are you almost done yet?
No.
You said you was almost
I
done.
said 10 minutes. Anyway, so she's not given an identity. Okay, so then we have John Wesley, who is he's 8 years old. He's undisciplined. He's unruly. He doesn't give a crap. We have June Starr, who is super sassy. She's a little older than John Wesley, we're to assume. Hold on. Okay, and then we have Pitty Singh, who is the cat, the misfit, you know, basically our main character. He's the escaped convict with Bobby Lee and Hiram. We're to assume that they're either also escaped convicts or that they helped the misfit escape. Okay. I'm just, oh, sorry, it was a kid. I heard a noise. I thought maybe somebody got hit by a car, because you never know. And then lastly, we have the grandma. Okay, so the grandma, we are given a choice here. If we believe that the grandmother is a good woman or not. Sorry, my neighbor's having like a party in our driveway. So is she a good woman? Is she the reason for all of this happening? What do you have? Okay, is she the reason that her entire family dies, or was this inevitable? Was this fate? Was this divine intervention? Was this destiny? Okay, so the grandmother, at the very beginning of the story, before they leave, she makes sure to put on these cotton lace gloves with a nice hat, and she says, so that if we die, everybody can recognize that I am a lady and that I died a lady. So as we jump then to the end, and she notes that her hat falls to the ground, that is the symbolism of, you know, her ladylike appeal dropping. Okay, like she's dropping that demeanor, and then that's when she's, you know, shot. And then oftentimes people have questions about what it means, you know, that she would have been a good woman had somebody been there to shoot her every minute of her life. So if somebody was essentially holding a gun to her constantly throughout her life, she would have been a good person. But besides that, she wasn't, because she's just more a pain in the ass. Let's see. So we've got a few themes. We have grace, spiritual blindness, and chance. Okay, so we'll start with chance. Bailey and the grandmother's choices set off a chain reaction to the events that happened to them, and how the family ends up all dead. Grace, it's kind of like this misguided illusion of grace. God's grace, it's always undeserved. So it falls on the grandmother as she realizes that all humans are part of one family, because that's another question that comes up is the misfit really her son? No, sorry. What the fuck is wrong with this? No, it's not. She's just saying, like, you could have been one of my own kids. And then, of course, there's spiritual blindness. She tries so hard to convince the misfit to, like, pray to Jesus and that he's good, but he can't see it, which is typically kind of always the case, you know, with certain things. I don't know. Chill. So I hope that helps. I'm sorry that was really choppy, and I'm sorry with all the interruptions. Those are not for you. Those are mommy daddy markers. Please get out of there. There's no need for you to be in this area. Okay? It is a good story. It's a, you know, there is a lot to interpret. Is the grandmother a good person? Is she not? Okay. Had she just spoken up about the that house being in Georgia, or I'm sorry, in Tennessee rather than Georgia, and they turned around, maybe this never would have happened. Had she listened and not brought the cat, this could have possibly never happened. So do we see the grandmother as the villain or not? She's not the heroine by any stretch of the imagination, but she could possibly be the villain. So is she not? How do we feel about her? All right, I think that's all I have on this video. So I will see you guys next week.
Can I say bye?
Yep, go ahead. So Sour Patch Kid, he's showing you. Okay, good job, thanks. So I will see you next week.
Bye!
Bye guys.